Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Mary D'Onofrio, partner with Bessemer Venture Partners, to discuss BVP's annual State of the Cloud report, highlighting cloud economy milestones, what's driving cloud valuations, and new framework to help founders accelerate go-to-market momentum. Mary, it's great to meet with you. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And the past year marked a paradigm shift in how we live and how we work. Not only have cloud companies reset the new normal, but market caps have also soared. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, sure, of course. I am one of the main architects of the BVP Nasdaq Emerging Cloud Index, EM Cloud, which is a Nasdaq index that tracks public cloud and serves as a benchmark for the industry. And what we've seen over the past year is that it's up 100%, even inclusive of some of the recent sell-off. And the pandemic, I think, catalyzed a lot of digital transformation initiatives that served as tailwinds for cloud adoption. On-premise was no longer an option, and this opened up TAM for cloud companies that facilitated many of the trends that we were seeing, between remote work to telemedicine to digital storefronts. And as a result, the market cap blended, to your point, increased dramatically, reaching over $2 trillion at the date of publication of the State of the Cloud. It's come off a little bit to about 1.9 trillion at this point. But, you know, a bunch of companies that are helping to engender those trends have really benefited. For example, you know, more endpoints for remote workers were trends that underpinned the growth of CrowdStrike, or infrastructure for remote workers allowed Okta to grow as they needed to secure remote users. And they actually just recently acquired one of Bessemer's portfolio companies, Auth0. Cloudflare for bandwidth and networking. And then obviously, as I think we've all noticed, productivity applications like Zoom took off, and even companies like Shopify and Wix provided digital storefronts to SMBs as brick and mortar were no longer possible. So I think what you saw is a large tailwinds behind cloud adoption, which were impactful in multiple industries.
So Mary, it sounds like there's certain stocks that are part of the changing of the guard, almost from the FANG stocks to this new cloud regime.
Certainly, and we really tried to capture that in our new basket called Mount SaaS, which is comprised of Microsoft, Twilio, Salesforce, Adobe, Amazon, and Shopify. And, you know, FANG stocks were really the ones that capitalized on the last mega trend, which is the move to the internet. And we think that Mount SaaS is capitalizing on the next mega trend, which is the move to cloud. And as of the data publication of the State of the Cloud, they were up 180% since the beginning of 2020 versus FANG that was only up 60%. And I think that all of the trends towards behind cloud adoption that we've seen recently that have championed the cloud stocks are continuing to champion Mount SaaS, and they're the stocks that we think are most reflective of that paradigm shift.
And Mary, while you mentioned that market cap has come off just a bit here, the question for investors really is, are these multiples and growth rates sustainable?
Yeah, sure. That is definitely the one on everyone's minds. You know, the rise in cloud multiples, I think, is a reflection of a couple of things. First of all, obviously, the pandemic's effect on other sectors really highlighted the relative strength of tech and cloud between the strong 40% growth rates, positive free cash flow margins, and importantly, business models that provided visibility into future year earnings. Between that and a low interest rate environment, there was huge capital rotation into cloud, driving up prices. But I think that what I was saying before on the TAM expansion that the pandemic catalyzed is also true. And there is a lot of runway for growth for cloud stocks from here. For example, even through the entire pandemic, the average BVP Nasdaq Emerging Cloud Index growth rate still stayed between 35 and 40%, which is tremendous considering the contraction that we saw in other stocks. And so, you know, near term, sure, there are going to be stocks that sell off and stocks that have a run up. But I think on the whole, over kind of the next decade, very, very bullish on the continued growth of SaaS and of cloud in the public markets.
And you read my mind for my last question. I was going to ask you, many of these trends, of course, they were accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Do you expect them to remain in place even as we get to the other side? Because Mary, I'll tell you, I have a feeling Zoom and how we virtually correspond and put on events and do media is not going back to the way that it was 100% in studio.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree with you. And I do think that a lot of those trends are here to stay. Certainly, we were talking about telemedicine. We have a portfolio company called Hinge Health that's continuing to move people towards telemedicine, even virtual learning. We have a portfolio company called Brightwheel that's facilitating virtual learning. Our portfolio company, Procore, is helping to digitize a historically very on-premise industry like construction. So I think that we're going to continue to see those trends. And if anything, the TAM expansion that the pandemic helped to catalyze is just opening people's apertures for, the necessity to move to the cloud. And I think increasingly we're going to continue to see that.
All right, Mary, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.